So I'm a cryptographer. People forget that a cryptocurrency is a currency secured by cryptography, right? It's kind of like implied in the name, but many people actually overlook that little detail. Crypto actually before 2008 used to stand for cryptography, not cryptocurrency. But I changed. I lost that battle already. The goal here is literally just to kind of like, from my perspective, so more from the math side, just to kind of tell you where things are going. So I don't really care if a quantum computer appears today, next week, in a month, 3 years, 5 years, 10, 15, 20, but exactly where things are going. And surprisingly enough, even though the quantum computer, like the perfect quantum computer, doesn't exist today, we know very well what they will be able to do. So maybe you have that question kind of like, oh, how can we know that something is secure against a quantum computer, right? Because it's like, if the quantum computer doesn't exist today, how can we know what something in like 20 years will be able to do? And the truth is, like, that math is very well understood. Like even some of the attacks I'm going to talk about, kind of like hash functions, let's just start touching on some of the topics. Those are actually tight, so you know for sure that a quantum computer can only get that good. Like there's literally proofs of tightness, like that's the optimal, like that's literally as good as it gets, whether that's the first quantum computer or in 10 years or in 100. And feel free to stop me at any point in time. The goal is literally to kind of just like take a very holistic approach and deconstruct as much as possible. So like literally for me, the starting point of the conversation is and something very basic. So say I give you my iPhone and there's like, literally it's locked, it has a 4-digit PIN. And you were to try to unlock it. At this point you take two approaches, right? So you can try to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 0, 0, 0. You can try to guess like the most probable ones. Humans are very bad at that. But if I were to tell you like, oh, those 4 numbers were generated by a computer, right? So they were random. Or maybe I threw like dice to get to those numbers, right? So all of a sudden you kind of have the situation where you have to get digit number 1, digit number 2, 3, and 4. And really guessing kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 0, that's not really going to help you because now you know that it wasn't really generated by a human, so you're not going to try my birthday or like random dates. So what's probably the best thing you can do is literally go what you would call a brute force, right? So you go 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 2, right? And then you kind of go one by one. Unfortunately, the iPhone actually locks you, but let's pretend it doesn't. Like, let's pretend I actually post like something there and you actually get like all you can eat, all you can drink type of approach. So you can go all the way, and if you remember kind of like the boring or maybe exciting, it depends on you, like like those old school days, is you have 10 options here, 10 options here, 10 options here, and 10 options here, right? Because it can be 0, 1, 2, all the way to 9. So that's like 10. Computers talk in bits, right? So they don't really understand, kind of like, they don't do this very well. So if you were to, this result here, so 10,000, in bits, this is roughly like 14 bits you would need to represent this number. So like computers understand bits very well. So what that means, and this is the most important part, so like the moment you grasp this, we're set for the, like the proper, we're set for the race. So if this is all like the number of bits you need, like this is all literally every single like possibility, if you go through all 10,000 you break it, it means that if you do 2 to the 14 operations, so if your computer does this, and very important, like this is the total number of options, then you can break the password, right? Like any questions here, that's literally fine. You go like, oh, I don't really understand. We can checkpoint here, that's fine. And the reason why I think this is like super important, because the moment you grasp this, we only need to change this power here. Because this is for iPhones. But a Bitcoin secret key is basically the same, but this just gets much bigger, not a bit bigger. It just gets much, much bigger. So that's the hardest part. If you've made it through there, we're off to a good start.
I'm free.
Yes.
So you say that's an iPhone 14?
So like any iPhone, if it has 4 digits, you need 14 bits of space to actually break it. So you need to go through 14.
Maybe not.
You need to you need to go through 14 bits, and kind of like that's like the hardest thing that I always found it very hard in when I started computer science was kind of like this notion that we do regular numbers very well, like phone numbers. It's always like 0 to 9. Everything is like, but then when you talk computer terms, it's always zeros and ones. And you need to kind of like convert it to that. So there's this operation that's called like the log2, like logarithm. Like how do you convert to that? And that like for me this is very hard, but it's actually something I recommend you do. Not necessarily today, but look at, if you think Bitcoin, like mining power, the computer is always like creating hashes. So like Bitcoin hashing power is actually measured in hashes per second. But it's not, if you were just to look at hashes per second, the number would be so big because there's literally so many computers. So I think they actually measure it in like beta hashes per second. So it's like 10, it's like literally times 10 to like a lot. And for me, as like in cryptography, you never use this number here. You're always going to use like if you have 14 bits, it means your security is of 14. Like you say, we have 14 bits of security. So like that's if you were to speak the lingo. So if you ever talk to a cryptographer, you can literally go, yeah, I generated my iPhone passcode, like little 4 digits with a computer, a dice, whatever, and I have 14-bit security. And they're going to be very impressed. They're going to be like, oh, nice. Like you actually have it in binary terms.
So, sorry, just to check.
Yeah.
10,000 in binary is a 14-digit number, that's why
Yeah, you need 14. It's actually a bit less. It's like 13.8, but you don't have half bits. Yeah, so you need that extra one. You need the remainder. But that's exactly it. Yeah. So now, and this is kind of like the most fundamental thing is, when you think cryptocurrencies, you're always going to have 3 things. So you're going to have a secret key, all right? And this here is 256 bits, all right? And if maybe you remember or you know what curve Bitcoin uses, but if you're actually like that type of like aficionado, you can just preserve this number here and just add sec p 256 k1, all right? That's not a coincidence. That's literally because the security of it's typed to 256 bits. So you have 3 things when you think like cryptocurrency. You have a secret key, and a secret key, this is the size. So you can literally think, if I were to give him a coin right now, and he did coin flips, if he flipped it 256 times, he could generate a very secure secret key. Then this gets converted or mapped to a public key. And then since I can't reach there, I'm just going to go downwards. And then this gets turned into an address, right? Not all actually get to this stage. Some people actually, like some projects, if you focus on Bitcoin, then this actually even goes. We can call this address 1, and this is the actual like final address because you hash twice. So here you generate a random number. And this is why I wanted to use the iPhone example. It's exactly the same. But instead of just being 14, now we need 256, right? So the security here, as implied, is to the 256. This is insane. Like this number here is unbelievable. You cannot even visualize this. Like, this is more than the grains of sand in the whole world. It's something astronomical. It's insane, right? So that's why you go like, you would never break this. This is different, right? And the reason I'm drawing these boxes is because I literally want you to think of it as like a little target. Like, if a quantum computer will literally get to attack different things within your pipeline. So they will see different things. And the way I like to think of it as a cryptographer is the moment you show your cards, and showing some cards is okay, like if you show your public key, it's still your public key. You should be, like today, if you show your public key, you're safe. But you are exposing this. So what can they do with that, right? So I just want you to look at this and be like, boom, you get to attack this, you get to attack this, you get to attack this, and this. And obviously, you're only as secure as your weakest link. Go for it.
Can I ask a quick question? The two addresses. Can you explain that a little bit more? I wasn't aware of the two addresses.
So it's not really two addresses. It's like, this is just, you only generate one address, but you just hash it one time here first. So you're going to hash the PK using something called SHA-256. And then you're going to hash it again here using something called RIPE-MD 160.
RIPE-MD 160.
Yeah. And funny enough, I've actually co-authored with the creator of this.
Okay.
So if you want to, hey there, what's up?
Yeah.
So if you have any specific questions, we can actually talk to the source of of this. He doesn't know why it's used, though, which is pretty funny.
He doesn't know why it's used.
No. Even though he still defends to this day, and I was supposed to have a meeting with him today, actually, because we're working on a paper together. He defends to this day that this is the best hash function that was ever created, and is like, and we can Bart Pernille. He's a professor in Belgium at KU Leuven. So the flow here is, you have a secret key. From the secret key, there's like, if you want to get technical, you multiply it times the generator. Maybe you've seen this, and then you get a public key. And then this, ideally, I want you guys to think of it as a single operation, because it's what you were saying from a public key. You just generate an address. But under the hood, this is what happens. You hash it twice, right? And the first myth here that I want to kind of like break is people go, oh, hashing twice adds more security. And that's completely false, all right? It's like completely false, because what matters is the final step. And we'll get to kind of like concrete numbers. So we know here, if you today, so like this is how much it takes you to break like an iPhone pin. This is very fast. Like you literally can write code, and that's very fast. And then the caveat I want to add here is that computers are very smart. So like now you can parallelize computation. Like a computer doesn't have to go 0001, 0002. You can actually give your processor, like to each core, you can give it the same task, and you can kind of like do a divide and conquer. So you can actually, if you were to think of it as very simple, you can tell one core and you go, listen, you're going to start from 000, 0, and to the other core you go, you're going to start from 9999, and one goes upwards, the other one goes downwards. And you just divide the computation times by 2, because one is going up, the other one is going down. And that's actually called a meet in the middle, like they both go. So the key thing here is, not only this is the work that has to be done, so if you were today to create code, you could literally try to create code yourself, where you go, I'm going to try to break someone's secret key. Yeah, you go from 0000 to 156 times, all the way. We're not getting anywhere because this is so big, it's like insane. Right? So that's like, boom, caveat 1. But this is just a string. String is very secure, as long as it's big enough, right? And this is the security you have today. A quantum computer, what it does, you get 2 to the 128. So like instead of just doing 0, 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, the speed up is actually faster. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense to talk about why, because that's kind of like the way under the hood the quantum computer works. So this is what it means. If a quantum computer wanted to try to guess my secret key, how much work would it have to do? This. This is too big. It's crazy. Like, it's insane. Like, it's again, like, it looks like this is only like 2 times bigger than that, but it's actually like exponential, like you have to actually raise it. This is already insane. Like, it's insanely big. So you know for a fact that this is not what the quantum computer is going to attack. Right? So you can rest assured, whatever you did here, unless you generated it from some random, like, words from a book that you tried to convert it to a 256-bit number, then your security is not really this big. This only applies if you generated it securely. So if you did a coin flip, or if you went to your computer and you did it properly. If you use like a brain wallet, that's usually, like, they call it that, like if you chose some random words, not the beep mnemonic, that's fine. But if you actually went to a book and you literally chose whatever, like you went to the Bible and you chose like 12 words from there, that's more trouble.
So yeah, just a quick one. So the 128 being half of 256. Am I on the right track? Is that because the quantum computer can think in like heads and tails at the same time?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this, yeah, that's it.
I just wanted to check.
That's it. No, that's it. Yeah. That's exactly it.
It's still massive.
So you have, it's the square root of that. Like it gets, which the more this goes down, and I'm going to touch on this very quickly, and you will see it here, for example. Here you will see, I'm giving you a spoiler already, but this is where you will start to see kind of like where things get tricky.
I just wanted to make sure, so this is brute forcing the private key.
Secret key, exactly. If you were to try to just guess secret key today, this is it. Quantum computer, this is it. Yeah, exactly, and it will never be. Unless you messed up in your generation process.
And can I ask that the 2 to the power of 128, does that roughly correspond to 12 words and 256
Yeah.
24? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, today.
Yeah.
But in the quantum realm, that changes a bit.
Okay.
Because this is what you have today with the 24 words. But this is what you will have with 24 words with a quantum computer anyway.
And does it matter like how much more powerful a quantum computer gets, or that is just the limit?
No, it will always be square root.
Okay.
You will always just get the exponent, divide by 2, and that's a limit.
That's comforting.
Yeah, no, exactly. So this one here, and like I love to break it down into these pieces because they're very easy to grasp, right? Kind of like you know exactly what is going on. Like you know, okay, I generated my secret key, step 1. And then I have my public key. And your public key is used to check your signature. So whenever you make a transfer, people need that one there. And then you actually have your wallet address, right? So like those are usually 3 very clean building blocks. And they're very well understood. So now you have public key. And then the thing here, and I'm going to leave that for last, and it's because if I were to create a wallet right now, and then he sends me 0.1 Bitcoin, if he's being a good friend, no one would ever see this, right? Only me. Because if he's to send me money, what I'm going to be is I'm going to be like, yo, Gonzalo, send it to this address. So the bad guy never saw this. It only sees this address, right? And here, Bitcoin uses RIPE-MD 160, and one thing we know for sure is that it uses this one because it's shorter, because it's only 160 bits. That's literally what this means, is that no matter if you're trying to hash like the Bible, you literally can have like a little book here, the output is always going to be like very tiny. It's always going to be like 160 bits, literally, no matter what you're trying to hash. What that also means is, and here is basically, if there is a wallet address on the Bitcoin blockchain, to break it today, meaning if you were to find something else to generate that exact same address, the work is you can probably guess. The numbers are pretty clean, right? So like usually, the thing I love about cryptography here is that it's actually pretty well understood. So you'll see like sec P256, you go like, oh, that's the security of like, it's, if you are like very technical, it's like the prime. And so the secret key is going to be that size. And then it's like, oh, RIPE MD 160. That's the size of the out. So it kind of tells you the numbers there for you to know like, oh, okay, you know like in what realm you are. So this is today, but if you are to go to the quantum computer world, 2 to the 80. All right, and this is where I find things very fascinating. So until a couple years ago, 2 to the 80 was actually considered pretty secure. Like back in when I started working as a cryptographer, often you did some math stuff and you'd be like, no, 2 to the 80 is okay. Like it's, especially if it's something like minimally like low effort, it was like no one's gonna get 2 to the 80. It's something like insane. Right now, like the last time I checked was like a couple months ago, but the Bitcoin network was doing 2 to the 81 per year. Right? So a couple years ago, we thought, oh, if no one is going to do that type of computation, that's insane. Even if you were to assume all the computers in the world. Today, granted, it's not a quantum computer. So you always think pre-quantum world, post-quantum world. But today, you have maybe even more now. 2 to the 81 is being done per year. Right? So every 2 years, it's 2 to the 82. Every 3 years, it's 83. And it may be even more now. That's actually a fun thing that we can check a bit later today. So you can easily imagine it like at some point you're going to be able to transpose this into the post-quantum world, right? So if you are actually able to get a quantum computer that does this, which is considered like fairly doable for like some of the stuff that is discussed, then you already see that this transposition is bigger than that. All right, so let's go over exactly what this attack means. So what this means is, if he has a wallet on the Bitcoin blockchain, and this is now the big caveat. Imagine he has a wallet that has $5 there, all right? A quantum computer is going to have to do all of this work, so in this case it's 2 to the 81, all of this work to be able to find another secret key that results in another public key that hashes to this, that hashes to exactly his, to steal $5. Is that worth it? Probably not, right? So just to keep everyone kind of like reassured, like the amount of work you would have to go through to just break this. But often, and this, like, why I wanted to touch on this is a lot of people always go like, oh, but hashes are secure, quantum computer is never going to steal my money. Like, yeah, probably, because this is still a very large number. 2 to the 80 is pretty big. And if you have like $10, $100, a grand, 10 grand, maybe even like 100 grand, it's so little money for the amount of compute you need, especially within like next, like who knows? And this is like kind of like the main takeaway here is no one really knows, and you're going to see a lot of noise on Twitter. You're going to see a lot of noise. Like you saw like the Google quantum computing tweet, and everyone went crazy like, oh, this is doomsday, it's game over. But then if you read like the footnote of that announcement, they go something along the lines of, we aren't really using this computation for anything useful. It's like a very specific problem that they found where that like little thing they created is very useful. Like no one really has this figured out. Now, recent developments are showing it that it's getting much better. And it's not really like nuclear fusion, where nuclear fusion has been like a mirage for like the last like 50 years. Everyone go like, no, it's next year. Like you have a lot of cryptographers who are very skeptical, where they go like, oof, okay, I may see it. Not now, not 3 years, but maybe 5 to 10. And others are going to go like, no, 10 to 15. Regardless, all right, regardless, by 2035, so now it's officially 10 years because we switched the year, there's this association, and you may have heard of it, called NIST. So it's the National Institute of Science and Technology. So NIST kind of like sets the rules for cryptography worldwide. Kind of like what is the best things to use. And I actually like to talk about this a bit, just to show how things work and how much of like a Wild West this is. So literally the way cryptography works is, say you need to encrypt something. Like the world actually needs cryptography, right? So like you need to find a way to use like a symmetric encryption. NIST literally goes, what's up everyone, like this is something we need in the world, so we're starting a competition for the next 5 years. And anyone in the world can submit their ciphers. We're going to evaluate it in performance, speed, memory, everything. And everyone's going to also try to break yours, right? So you're going to have the smartest people in the world both submitting and trying to break each other's ciphers. Which is actually a blast if you're in the field, because it's hilarious. So some of the stuff that you see, it actually ends up being like a bloodbath, like a couple of things. So now you reach the point where exactly this just happened. So a couple years ago, they went, all right guys, a quantum computer can, like just to kind of like take one step back here, like we always think like Bitcoin and stuff, you can always envision you sending a lot of messages on WhatsApp back and forth. There may be someone just storing every single message to decrypt it like 20 years from now. And that's called store now, decrypt later adversary. So it doesn't really matter if it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 50 years. There's someone who is literally storing the entire WhatsApp transcript. Everything is end-to-end encrypted, everything is super private. But maybe 50 years down the line, you're going to be able to see whatever, Joe Biden message Trump, or Trump message like Putin, whatever. So like literally that quantum computer is going to be able to do it. So these guys went, oof, we're kind of reaching a point where we need to address this elephant in the room. So they did a competition, bloodbath. You've seen crazy things, crazy things. I'm going to record this one. Well, I'm going to refrain from a couple of bad comments. But you've seen, even, there was actually this type of cryptography that I really liked, but that was destroyed right towards the end of the competition. Like as they were about to announce the finalists, it was like broken. And the paper literally is called like, breaking this on a weekend on my laptop. And it just, boom, it destroyed everything. So maybe you've heard, and it's actually a good week to give this talk, of something called lattice-based crypto. And I don't want to touch into that, but it's just some different type of math here, how kind of like you transpose from one to the other. And that type of math is secure against quantum computers. And then, if we have time, we're still okay with time. We can touch a bit on the different types and kind of like different solutions, because you've heard of a couple of different proposals on that front. Any questions? I'll give you like any curiosity, fun fact. Yes, sir.
WhatsApp has a private key, because so they can decrypt it.
No. They should not. No.
They do. Okay, when I use my WhatsApp, you see that saying that the keys are changing.
Yeah.
But you don't have any ability to say, no, I don't want the key to change.
Yeah, that's
So
like
who's changing
in the
the key?
code. Yeah, it's in the
Not me.
code. I mean, it's not you personally,
Okay.
it's the code itself.
Well, that's the
So, yeah.
That's the
So I won't like disagree completely there, because what happened was you have Signal. Signal is the most secure messaging app in the world, right? And it uses tech from these guys called Open Whisper technologies. So it was like these old school like guys, they like worked on this, and they created like the pedigree best cryptography in the world. Then WhatsApp was like, oh, what you guys are doing is sick. We're going to use it as well, but we're going to close source it.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But in theory, they use whatever Signal uses, but it's very hard to actually kind of like look into exactly what's going on.
It's end-to-end to third parties.
It should be
Yeah.
like end-to-end, like pure,
Yeah.
but then it gets very controversial. And then honestly, the fact that Facebook is there in the mix, it will never look good. Unless they literally open the whole book.
One more question on this, sir. How can you derive the private key from the public key?
We'll get there. That's like literally, we're going, now that we got to this block, we're going to get to that one pretty shortly. You had that question there?
Oh, I think it's the same thing. Yeah, I was just thinking about the scenario you mentioned where, you know, an adversary has to do X amount of work just to be able to get $5 worth.
Yeah.
And then if that changes if they have any spend address at their disposal
Yeah.
of the target.
So that's where, exactly. That's the perfect segue for this. So clearly, and then if for some reason, I don't know, only you get to see this, because you're the actual person generating this. No one else should be able to see this. But if for some reason you're going to try to mess with SHA, I don't know. It doesn't even make sense. Because again, it's actually in the number. So this would be the amount of compute that would take you. And then again, in the post-quantum world, 2 to the 28. So this is also something you don't really want to attack. Like you want to kind of like stay away from that. So from 4 blocks, one that you never really even had access to, so like if you were, you know for sure that you see this, so this is probably always going to be your number 1 priority because it's the one you know you see for sure. It's the stuff that goes on chain for everyone to see. You're never really going to see this unless you are the actual person. And that's such a convoluted attack. Where, like, am I actually going to go, oh, I was able to change an address, and it goes like, bro, it's your own address. Like, it's literally the way you did it, it was you. Like, what? Like, it just gets so nonsensical. And 3, boom. And this is like the Achilles heel. And a lot of caveats here for this as well. And I want to start kind of like you have, depending on your background, what you would think is very reasonable, and cryptographically speaking, what actually kind of like you use as reference. So in cryptography, you're always assuming there is something like there's this like fancy model where you assume such a strong model where you go, the bad guy is delivering my message. So it's just to make sure you are so secure, and you can literally think of it this way. Imagine I type a message on my WhatsApp. I hit send. Imagine literally you send it, and the person or entity in charge of delivering it is like the Chinese government. It's literally super hostile, something very hostile. And the whole claim is, if my system is secure against that entity hostile delivering it, then I'm golden. Like, because that's the worst you can assume, right? But some people go like, nah, not really. Like, you can just send it to my friends, like, whatever. There's flashbots, will just like deliver the message for me. Like, we can run this. I can trust that entity to deliver the message, and it's good. So you'll often see some like hardcore Bitcoin maxis go and say very advanced models assume that the bad guy is delivering your message. That's not really very advanced. That's like probably a couple of weeks into cryptography type of advanced. But if you don't really come from that background, I don't really judge you saying that, because it's so hard to think about it. You go like, well, why would the bad guy deliver my message? Right? But the goal is literally to assume it's no coincidence that MEV exists. Right? What is MEV? What was called minor extractable value. Minor extractable value was literally people submitted their transactions, and all the miners were there like, oof, can I make profit off this? It was literally the same. They were embracing kind of like this role of being the bad guy. They just call it the profit-driven adversary. For you, it's the same. Like, that guy is being bad to you. Like, he's literally rearranging the transactions. He's making sure he gets like the best outcome for him, not for you. And the moment you send the transaction, it's up for like that network to decide, right? So I, as a cryptographer, always take that very aggressive stance. And my background is literally design and analysis of protocols. So it's literally like lesson number 1. The bad guy is in charge of delivering your messages. It's actually pretty funny. If you read my papers, it's verbatim. There's a section called adversarial model, and we literally go, we model our protocol in the Dolev-Yao model. In other words, the adversary is in charge of delivering the message. As a result, the adversary gets to drop, change, or do whatever they want with the message. Literally, you go to any paper I wrote, adversarial model, it's this. Maybe I changed the phrasing slightly, but it's literally this. So I'll leave it up to you, to see what makes sense. I think the aggressive stance is what makes sense because it's literally what you see every day in the wild. Like MEV is insane, especially today. If you look at Ethereum, it's unbelievable. All of those sandwich attacks and all of those like shotgun things, it's out of control. And what happens, and then we can actually dive deep into kind of like just under the hood here. Coinbase may not be the best example, but you have whatever wallet, like a non-custodial wallet. You click send transaction, right? That transaction goes to the mempool. And what is the mempool? Is literally, you can think of it as this open book, and all of the nodes are looking at it. And they go, okay, Mario is making a transaction, Peter is making a transaction, this guy is making this transaction, this guy. The moment you actually click send, you're literally sending something signed with this. And if you signed something with this is now up for grabs. Period. If you signed, this is up for grabs. So like the moment you click send transaction, boom, everyone sees this. People go like, oh, only the miners see it. It's the same. Cryptographically speaking, it's the same. It's literally, if there's one bad miner, he can tell everyone. Go like, hey guys, what's up? Mario just sent this. Boom. He's a bad guy. He can do whatever you want. Right? It's like very easy. And that's the key point. Whenever this is up for grabs, this is up for grabs. Right? So you go from a situation where you're very secure here, but now you expose this, boom, game over. Now, this may sound scary. How strong of a quantum computer do you need to be able to do this in real time? Because it has to be basically in real time. The truth is, I don't know. I'm actually talking with some people in the space to go like, can we work on like a detailed paper so that we can get to the core of this question? Because this is what cares. This is what matters for people. Like, it's literally, if you think about it as a person, it's like, what matters to you? It's like, if we're good here, we're good here. Can I know, like, for how long am I good here? Right? I don't know. A lot of people give you a lot of like different convoluted answers. This is actually one paper I'm trying to write up with a couple of people. I'm not going to name names. I cannot give you an answer today, but this is considered feasible. So in cryptography, every single paper that is written, you literally assume that this is considered possible. Just because it's better to assume that the worst case scenario is possible. Because then, if you're prepared for that, you're prepared for the worst.
I've got a question.
Go for it.
So is there a window of exposure when I send my transaction to the mempool but it hasn't been placed in a block and it gets to a new address? Is that say I put a high transaction fee is going to get in the first block? Is it whatever 0 to 10 minutes rough?
Yeah.
It's that so you need to do all of the calculations and and then redirect that payment within 10 minutes.
Exactly. So there's two parts to that answer. All right. So part one is the mempool. It's just a broadcast. Imagine he makes a transaction. He whispers it to me. That's part one. It's him talking to the RPC, like the RPC node. There's one node that is your entry point. So that's part one. And then part two is me telling everyone like, hey guys, what's up? This is a signature. He wants to send $100. If I'm a bad guy and they go like, yeah, whisper to me. And I go like, yeah, no worries, I'll do it. And I go, guys, what's up? Go. And his transaction never actually hits the mempool. Granted, he can check the mempool, but who does? Right? Who is actually going on the mempool and being like, is my transaction there waiting for, like, no. So if I'm honest and I go like, hey, what's up guys, boom. Yes, that's exactly the answer. It's literally the time window from me going, this is a transfer taking place. And then at that point, it becomes purely game theoretical. It's like, how much money is he sending? How much money does he have in his wallet? How much compute does it take me to rake his wallet? And it just like, it's like a whole, you cannot even really model it because it's so convoluted. You didn't even know the cost of that type of compute. Like, you don't know. Maybe it will be commoditized in 20 years. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will be like for government. Who knows? Like, the thing I like is just to know the building blocks. And then you can conjecture your own scenarios, kind of like, what if this actually becomes possible? But you know for sure what is realistic and what isn't, right? So like, and the goal of this like talk is literally that, is like, get rid of all that noise, because you hear so much noise and so much misinformation on Twitter, on both sides. Bitcoin is broken, it's game over, done, like, or Bitcoin is super secure, nothing's ever gonna happen, right? So this is literally as is, math, boom. But this is from the perspective of the user. So we're still okay with time. So like, I want to talk about nodes very quickly after.
You're saying that the private key is exposed during that window?
If it's strong enough, the quantum computer, yeah.
No. You're saying that the private key
No.
is exposed?
No.
Okay.
The public key is exposed, but a strong enough quantum computer can go and obtain your secret key, which should not be possible. So today, only this operation is possible. You can go from secret to public. You cannot go backwards. It's literally called a trapdoor function, because you get trapped on the other side. Like, you go one way. But a strong enough quantum computer, it can come this way. That's why it's scary.
Okay,
but if you expose this one, a strong enough quantum computer can jump, and this is where problem happens.
But the public key does not indicate the sample,
It does.
all of the data that is the private key.
It does. So exactly, it actually does exactly that, unfortunately. Because what happens, I'll show you. So what happens is you literally, usually they just call it X. So like, you generate a number X, and you multiply it times the generator of the curve. And what you're saying today is true is, from this number, you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what point is actually behind this. But what the quantum computer does, it goes by G. Like, it can actually factor out G. And it goes, boom, X. You're off to the races. So you always assume, and again, this is like on the theoretical realm, you see like a big discrepancy between what is modeled, what's like all the papers you're going to see this. Is a quantum computer goes very easily from xg to just x. Because this is what's expected to happen over time, right? So like, the sooner you kind of like are embracing this message, the better. Now, should you worry about this today, like your Bitcoin is going to be stolen tomorrow? No, it's okay. You will have plenty of time to actually know what to do. Now, the problem is more agreeing on what to do rather than knowing what to do. Knowing what to do is very well understood.
Very nice layout. This makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Can I ask, fundamentally, is this more or less the same problem other cryptocurrencies
Oh.
are going to face?
Pretty much, yeah.
Fundamentally, public key.
Yeah, on the user side, yes.
Okay.
On the user side. And then I want to touch on the node side. And Bitcoin, and then that's kind of like the best part. That's where Bitcoin does very well. Pretty much like, if you are to look at Ethereum, all right? Ethereum does exactly this, but you only hash once. It's like, you don't need this. It's not like this actually gave you anything in the first place. And instead of RIPE-MD, they use something called Kexac, which, not to confuse you, to actually kind of like, this is basically like the original version of something called SHA-3. All right? So if these are basically the same. There's just only one variable that changes, basically. So if you ever see like exactly like, oh, it's SHA-3. If you are to code, they're not going to give you exactly the same output, but this was just first to market. And then, yeah, the competition. And then SHA-3 won, but they changed a bit. So this changed a bit and became that. And it actually like it was a good example for the competition. It kind of shows how things work. So literally what happens in Ethereum is you generate a secret key, obtain the public key, hash it. You're going to do Kexac as well. Kexac is supposed to be 256, but Ethereum goes, yeah, 256 is too big to then like copy paste addresses. So we're going to put it 160 as well. So we're just going to chop off the first bytes.
Back down to 80 again.
Exactly. So it's literally the same thing. It's very easy to model. And then if for some reason the cryptocurrency doesn't do this block, then it's even worse, right? Because you're already starting at like the worst possible spot.
You don't even send it to even release your...
Yeah, exactly, because your address is already on chain like this. So you see now with these building blocks, you can already fundamentally analyze who is in really big trouble, who is in okay trouble. Like it's already enough for you to kind of like grasp the landscape of things. I don't know if there's any questions at this point. I think you're grasping it pretty well. So that's us users, right? And I always like to start with users because that's like the most pressing topic. Like how does it affect us? Because the miners have a lot of money, right? They actually get to, this is stealing from us. And the miners, and I'm actually happy we talked a bit about kind of like how the whole mempool works and everything.
So is it fair to say that over the next sort of short to medium term period, the addresses that are first in line for risk are the ones that have got loads and loads of like...
Yeah, because Bitcoin, there's a type of address in Bitcoin where it's just the public key, right? So Satoshi's first coins are here. So they always say that it's like the canary test. Or the canary, yeah, it's like, those are up for grabs. Now, when, and the risk associated with that, yeah, it's scary. It's very scary because it's a lot of money. The one thing I've been thinking about this week is, like Bitcoin has a 21 million fixed supply. But how much money is it actually? Hey there, how are you?
How's it going?
Okay, nice to see you. But like, how much money is it actually liquid? Like how much money has it been lost, forgotten, stolen? And that number is actually pretty big. Like there's a lot of people who lost, and there's like a couple of studies. And that's actually something I want to formalize a bit more. Like to actually get, I write like boring papers, but I actually try to make it like understandable I try to talk about it. And that's why I'm an applied cryptographer. Like the papers are boring, but then I try to explain them as good as possible. Because I like to get concrete numbers. Because you may see a Twitter thread today where they come up with these random stats. 2 million Bitcoin are lost forever. And you go like, what? Where is this number coming from? Right? And then you actually try to see any sources for that, and it's like nonsense. It's just this random guy who, it just drives me insane. So now...
So what's the range, would you not guess?
The thing is, who are you going to count within that range, right? Are you counting, I count Satoshi as lost?
Exactly.
Right, so like then you're looking at a couple, like...
Five.
I think that's a bit too much, but like 10-15% maybe. That's where I would put it. If I ever get that number, I'll post it on like the crypto group.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just work, because you can actually kind of like do the analytics and pretty quickly figure out with a small enough margin. Sometimes you see like big whales, but it's always such a big scandal. Like this whale from back in 2012 moved some money. If you were to take that money out, like the rounding error is very small. You can confidently have an okay estimate on how much money is actually lost, because you just see, especially today, just touch 100 grand. Like today, I mean like now. If you haven't touched that money from like the days when it was like $2, it's highly unlikely that you have access to those liquid funds. Obviously, you then have kind of like tricky situations where money has been seized, but you also know that like the FBI publishes the wallets are seized. Like all of that stuff is public for good and bad. So, okay, let's try to do are we like hard stop at 8 or?
No,
Okay. I'll try to do a 5-minute like quick. I'll try to be as fast as possible. So, we talked about wallets, users, us. You're good, no questions. I think that makes sense. That's the most important part. So now, nodes. kind of like, okay, if you were to attack a blockchain, you can only attack two verticals. It's either the users or the consensus itself, how you are producing blocks, right? So you are here. You send a transaction. And if you are to get very like granular, you have the RPC node. This guy here may be a little mischievous guy, like it's like a little RPC, like malicious guy. And then this guy here will broadcast to all the other nodes. And I'm just going to use 4 as an example because it's actually a pretty good number. So assume now that this is the network. It's 4 nodes. Okay? That's it. And then these guys are going to produce, there's a block tied to another block, tied, like they just produce, like their role is just producing transactions. And literally the way it works is this guy sends a transaction and they all go, what is the best way for me to make money of this? Like Bitcoin, they arrange the transactions to make sure that they get paid a substantial amount of fees, right? So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to be like, higher fees, let's make it rain. But they want to be fast, all right? So I read actually a study that's very interesting, that some nodes in China are not even checking if the transactions are well formed. They literally just see it and like, boom, they create a block right away. And then if you understand kind of like the way Bitcoin produces blocks, is you basically define an order of transactions. So it can be like him to me, him to you. And then they just start creating this random number. So they literally start the process of mining. And they go, if I hash this random number with the list of transactions I have, do I get enough zeros in the start? And you can think, this is a problem you can actually measure in bits. Like obviously the difficulty changes, but if you remember like how we started the whole talk, like how much work is it needed? That problem is literally you can measure it in bits. Is how many bits do you need in the start? That is 2 to that number. Right, so you go 0001, 0002, 003, and until you get that number of zeros and you go, boom, guys, that's me. I'm the winner. I propose a block gets here. Network goes, does the hash and goes like, yeah, the proof of work adds up, right? And just a quick note here, kind of like taking a little tangent, but this is pretty important, for me at least. People go like, oh, what's the consensus of the Bitcoin network? Everyone goes, oh, proof of work, right? That's wrong. The consensus of the Bitcoin network is longest chain wins, right? Proof of whatever, stake, authority, work, proof of whatever stands for anti-Sybil. And Sybil is just the ability of him buying 1,000 Raspberry Pis and then appearing here with 1,000 computers and trying to subvert the network and pretend that he's like a stupid amount of. So proof of is just a way to keep this manageable, to prevent people from like flooding with infinite nodes. Consensus itself, so like what's Ethereum consensus? It's not proof of stake. Proof of stake is, oh, you want to join? You have to stake. That's okay. Like you stake, and then here they have like their own consensus. It doesn't sound elegant, like the longest chain wins, but that's literally what it is. And if you have like a background in coding, literally the way you code it is you receive a chain of blocks. Imagine I created like something and I send a chain of blocks like this big. You send it to a piece of code, the code is going to go, wait, this one has 1, 2, 3. Okay, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, discard this one. Longest chain wins. That's literally the computer code. But obviously you check like the amount of compute that was done. But it's literally longest chain wins. So like right now, imagine this hypothetical scenario. China has been mining Bitcoin for the last 2 years with a quantum computer. And no one knows. And out of nowhere, China drops this big blockchain with like 100 million blocks. Longest chain wins. Everything gets dropped. Literally, the whole Bitcoin blockchain, they'd be like, longest chain drop, like longest chain wins. Is that happening? No. But just for you to see kind of like code is law, that's the line of thought there. And there's actually attacks there's literally papers by like nice professors where they go, if you actually discover this block here, you should not tell people, because then you can start mining the next one without anyone knowing. So then you can actually try to build another one here. And then if for some reason someone finds, like the moment you hear the block, like someone finds it, you send it first. You go like, no, I timestamped it before you. I have like, oof, you're behind of the curve. So it's like the selfish mining attack. That's something that is modeled. Just like a fun fact.
Is that anything to do with the orphan blocks? Or is that different?
I mean, they're tightly, they're connected. Like if then you could have like the orphan block is literally either someone stopped building it or people abandoned it. I mean, they're usually like it's brother concepts, yeah. But it's some longest chain happened and you just drop the other one. So now, this is like the final stretch. Bitcoin only uses hashing, right? These guys don't have public keys. They don't need the public. They only have public keys to receive the Coinbase fee, which is actually like the first transaction in a block is the Coinbase. That's actually why Coinbase is called Coinbase. Is the first transaction just pays the miner. Miner just goes, the reward comes to me. This is everything else that happened. But they don't sign anything. They don't expose any public key anywhere. They just hash. So what does a quantum computer here get you? Quadratic speed up. So you can mine faster. Yes. Can you steal people's funds? It's what we were saying, what we just saw. Like that's funds. Quantum computing mines faster. Is it worth mining? Who knows? It will depend on how commoditized that hardware is, right? And like there will be a halving in a couple years. The rewards are going to go down. Is the security fee like going to go up? There's so many variables. Don't listen to that noise. Like they don't even know. There may be, like if there is a proper study, you will know which proper study actually models that. But there's so much noise, you don't know. Like, is it worth getting the $10,000 Bitcoin mining reward, but spending like $50,000 mining on like a quantum computer in 2030? No, right? But if you're being rational, but is it worth it if you're like in China and you're just trying to mess with the US government? Yeah, maybe. But then it's so hard to model, you see what I'm saying? Because then you have to model like the rational guy, the irrational guy, then like there's like so many, then you have kind of like the honest but curious guy. You have so many like weird models.
Doesn't it just depend on the future price of Bitcoin?
Yeah, exactly. So much so that there's actually some miners that turn off according to the Bitcoin price itself. So there's literally like a lot of miners in China where if it goes below 32,000, they go turn off until like it comes back up above like 35 because it's not profitable right now. Literally, this is a whole science. Like whatever number, people have done their homework. Like they know this has been going on for over a decade now. They understand this playing field very well. There's even papers that say that it's very hard to measure if like an ant miner is being faulty or if it's stealing like solutions to China, right? Because the producer comes from the factory in China. You plug it in your house or whatever. There's like some faults that happen in your mining process where that secret may actually have just been extracted to like a factory in China. And you wouldn't really know because data is encrypted, like, and that's like one of the principles of cryptography. Like, you cannot distinguish the string. You have no idea. Maybe it failed. Like, the amount of work that has to be done to spot that is unbelievable. But the amount of work on their side is arguably trivial, right? So like maybe there's like this genius hardware engineer, and he has this little like sneaky backdoor every now and then. You will see so much noise, but this is the type of stuff where not many people know of it, but even if it happens, it's very small scale, and once it gets caught, if it gets caught, if it's real, it's going to be such like a bombastic scandal that it's like chill.
So this is the node attack you're talking about, right?
Yeah, so this is for Bitcoin, right? So you just get to produce...
It's just an attack in the longest chain.
Yeah, you get to produce blocks much faster, yeah. Which effectively just means you're getting rewards much faster. But then at that point, I would even argue that the security parameter is going to adjust because you're producing so fast, right? And then kind of it has to adjust. You're going to outcompete a lot of people. So like if this guy has a quantum computer and is just on steroids, then these guys are going to be kind of like priced out. And then the economy arguably just becomes more around this guy. But then I'm pretty sure these guys would be like, yo, this is pretty messed up. What if we fork and just leave that guy outside because he's kind of taking all of our money and we just have like traditional Bitcoin, right? So
the difficulty just would go up for that individual.
Yeah. So this guy would then
eventually slow themselves down.
Exactly. So it's actually in his interest to just be slightly faster than these guys, right? So then again, this is the type of example where it's so hard to actually measure. There's so much variables here. And then again, is it a rational adversary or is it someone just doing it to like mess with the other guys, right? And then you will hear so many different types of stories. They will go, yeah, but China will show it to the US. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe not. Like, I think they have so much more, like, there's so much more they can do than to kind of, if you guys think about it, like, Bitcoin is what, like 1.5 trillion right now, roughly.
I think it's 1.8.
Yeah, or like, put it 2, yeah, 2 trillion. Every day, central banks settle, roughly speaking, over 7 trillion. Every day. So imagine Bitcoin, literally, like a ping pong ball. Central banks go like, puck, 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 3 times per day over the whole year. So is the nation state actually going to come for this first? Maybe not. But what if this, and then they'll counter, yeah, but what if this is worth like 200 trillion by then? Yeah, then, bro, that's a whole, yeah, but maybe not. Who knows? Like, you don't even know the cost of compute at that time, right? What I argue for is just that you have never seen so much evolution like in your lifetime. Like if you were to look at the last 50 years, it's the equivalent of centuries of evolution in mankind. It's insane. And even now with AI, you actually get to kind of like see it in front of you like almost every week. There's something kind of like crazy happening. So is it nonsensical to think that in like 15 years, something like this may actually be in the books? Probably not. Like maybe it will cost 5 million. Yeah, probably that would make sense. It's actually not really, like if it's an Intel agency to have it, they're probably not going to tell everyone, we cracked it, guys, we can see every single message. Like, no, they want to keep it for themselves. But if it comes from a private company, then they maybe want to commoditize it and just go like, guys, what's up? Like, we finally have it. You get to test like finance algorithms and who knows, right? So that's why I always ask you to focus on the math, right? It's like you know exactly what happens here, and then you get to make your own extrapolation based on price. Like, is compute very, very expensive? If so, you're okay. Like, they're not going to steal your $5. If not, you're in trouble. But at some point, if that's actually a problem, you have to change the type of cryptography that you use inside each block, right? And that's going to be like a whole discussion of its own. Maybe it's even a good investment because then this forks into like 3, so then you can have like a triple like exposure to different types of cryptography. Like I know I have worked with one of the guys who created the algorithm that was approved and is official by NIST. I'm not the biggest fan of that signature algorithm, and I'm risking getting a lot of heat for saying this on camera. But it can go both ways. Like there's people who verbally are against it, others who are like okay with it. Regardless, it actually went through a competition. No one has really found like very hardcore attacks against it. So for now, everyone goes like, it's okay. Now, is it the one type of cryptography that is proven to be tight and the strongest against quantum computer? Not really. Like there is literally conjectured attacks. You have other types of cryptography that are tight. The numbers are tight. You know, like this is as good as it gets. But it comes with trade-offs. They're much larger, much like it's harder to maintain. It's like a whole thing. So like they chose that lattice-based crypto. They were like, this is the best trade-off. It's not that much bigger. It's not that much lower. This makes sense. And we were like, sure, that's fine. I mean, the guys who created it are very happy. So I'll say that. Now, on a final note, that's Bitcoin, right? On Ethereum, though, how does a Bitcoin, like how does a block, and not just Ethereum, but on Ethereum, the miner gets chosen via stake. So he literally signs a message here. And the other 3 guys also signed that block. So if a quantum computer can forge signatures, oof, you're in trouble, right? Because now he can go, oh, listen, Mario, you proposed this block. And you go, oof, what? And like, yeah, Gonzalo even signed it. And you go like, oh, that's not really what happened. And you're like, bro, look at it, it's there. It's math, it's there, right? So you go like, oof, okay, tricky. So these guys, literally you see them now. No, Ethereum, like, oof, we need to look at post-quantum crypto. Yeah, because this is a big attack vector. This is the chain itself. Now, maybe you have a couple of full nodes here who will reject, maybe I'm being greedy and I'm trying to steal money from like people here. And they go like, no, that doesn't really happen. Yeah, but you can kind of have some interesting attacks here where you can kind of like double span and do some like interesting stuff here. So this is trouble. Not only that, and this is kind of like low-key, shameless plugging some of my work, is some of these guys use something called BLS, which you may have heard. So this is basically a type of signature scheme where if everyone in the room produced a signature and sent it to me, I would be able to aggregate it all into one. And then I could show, like, no, like all these guys signed it. And you can literally, just with my little piece, I would be able to show that you all signed it. And this is something called signature aggregation. It's actually pretty, signature aggregation. And a lot of chains are actually using BLS now to do, like, to optimize performance. This doesn't exist in a post-quantum world. Like this primitive here of aggregating signatures does not exist. So literally some of these chains, they say like, no, we are linear, we are very fast. Like, oof, if you use us, it's crazy. We have a crazy fast consensus protocol. And we go like, yeah, because you use BLS, okay, makes sense today. But you won't be able to use BLS in 10, 15 years. Because what these guys passed, this doesn't exist there. So you're going to be in big trouble. Because not only all of your signatures are going to get much bigger, you're about to go quadratic on networks with hundreds of nodes. You're going to be in big, big trouble. Just so you know, if you have 30 nodes, 30, quadratic is already a problem. That's why Ripple has, roughly speaking, 30 nodes. Because they cannot really, they go, oh, we're decentralized. No, you just cannot really onboard more nodes. You have full nodes. Yeah, that's decentralized. You get to look at the chain. But no one is really being part of the fun because you cannot really grow more than 30. Because quadratic in distributed systems, that's big, that's bad. Ethereum with like 400, done. There's no way that chain even runs without BLS. Like Avalanche now uses like cross subnet communication They go like, no, this subnet just signs and then we aggregate using BLS and we send it to the other subnet. Yeah, good luck doing that now with like 500 nodes, doing a cross message, like a cross subnet message from one side to the other with 9,000 messages, all post-quantum. It's game over, right? So some of these guys, now you make two bets. You either fundamentally change what you have, or you just pray that someone in the cryptography space actually solves this problem. So if someone actually appears with a paper that goes, we introduced the first signature aggregation scheme in a post-quantum world, they're going to go like, yes, yes, we're saved, thank you. If not, you're going to have to go there because there's no other way. So that's nodes, all right? And so usually if you see BLS, you can just think, oh, that's trouble in the future. And then everything else is usually trouble anyway because signatures get much larger. So whatever performance you have today usually gets much slower because you have to send bigger messages, and then blocks get much bigger because signatures are much bigger. So if you're trying to send money, it can easily be like 5-10 times bigger than whatever you're sending today. So that's basically question.
Are nodes and validators
The same.
Okay. And then what, with regard to what you were just saying, what about Solana? And they have, what, Fire Dancer, I think it's called? I thought that was going to increase the number of validators.
Yeah, it's more, yeah, they kind of do some like different things. They do different tricks as well because they scale mostly on compute power. So they literally go, oh, if you make this node much stronger, they kind of take a stance where, oh my God, don't post this on Twitter. They kind of take a stance where they go, your grandma doesn't really need to be able to run a node. Like you can actually run something much faster. And it's not actually very unreasonable. I don't really like have Solana, but they just fundamentally take that stance. They just go, yeah, the internet is run on big, powerful machines. All of you guys are trying to do something very different than the internet today. And then you can be like, yeah, that makes sense. Amazon Web Services is actually
Lowering
like...
barriers to entry and having more people in
Or
transactions.
closing. So what they do is they kind of like actually have higher barrier to entry because you actually need to invest more in compute. But then you would arguably have much faster performance because the computers are just much stronger. I actually don't know much about some of the stuff that Solana is doing now, but traditionally, from what I remember, that was mostly it. And then they have like the proof of history, right? They have like this weird hashing algorithm.
So just to wrap up, in Bitcoin, 3 things are plausible to change post-quantum. It's the addresses, public keys, and the longest chain potentially. Is that the main 3?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't really, you would just tweak the longest chain. You wouldn't really change it. The other guys would actually change it. Yeah. So the first discussion that will appear is definitely going to be what type of post-quantum crypto are we going to use? Because if you look at Bitcoin scripting language, checking signatures is automated in literally within like the Bitcoin script. So you're going to need to create new like opcodes to validate that type of math. Right, so what happens today is literally just an elliptic curve operation, which is today's cryptography. You will need to have support for arguably lattice-based. But some guys, I don't know why, a lot of people talk about Lamport signatures. People go crazy with Lamport signatures. But you could arguably use that too. That will be the elephant in the room. And it probably will just be whatever is already. So these guys passed some like documentation a couple, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where they say that all of the elliptic curve crypto that we use today, so literally everything you see on the padlocks, every single thing on the internet has to be deprecated by 2035. So 10 years. These guys are saying the whole internet has to change by 2035. What we use today is gone. Like you can use like a hybrid approach where we keep your stuff and then you use a new one. But whatever you use today has to be like gone. These guys are actually kind of like very skeptical. They go like, we shouldn't really listen to them. Whether or not that's the right stance, who knows? I mean, 10 years is so long. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I always try to keep an eye out with what the intel agencies say, because keep in mind that they are literally securing some of their own internal stuff. So if like the White House all of a sudden decides to use post-quantum crypto, me personally, I'm always like, oof, do they know something I don't? And I go like, why are you all of a sudden kind of like re-encrypting all of your like local things? Is it to kind of maybe push a narrative and make people like paranoid? Yeah, you can always kind of like tweak and like have these convoluted versions, right? And that's what I was saying. The moment Facebook is doing something, you can always tweak it and you go like, yeah, you're open source, but you have a backdoor on the web app. You can always find...
But law enforcement has access.
Yeah, so you can always kind of like tweak the narrative.
If law enforcement has access to it, it means that Facebook would have had to, WhatsApp would have had to.
Yeah, exactly. And you have...
And in order to supply the data, you
need to be able to open it. Yeah, so then there's literally... Yeah, and there's even like weird like laws where if you're... I think it was something like this. If you are storing like chat transcripts in China servers, then you need to be able to decrypt them. And that was a whole thing, because then Apple wanted to do business in China, but then it meant that they needed to be able to decrypt it. So then they were like, no, we hold the secret keys in this like secure storage. It was like a whole thing. And everyone goes like, yeah, but you hold the keys, right? It's kind of like, and they're like, no, but we're nice guys. And it's like, yeah, but you hold it.
Which is why
so you can always, it's always like the whole, it's always a whole thing.
Which is why Signal doesn't store anything.
Yeah. Which then ends up being like a pain, because if you change phones, it's like it doesn't have like previous keys.
There's not a way to be secure without going to that trouble.
Yeah. No, it's a whole thing. I've actually like, I used to work with anonymous communications for military and intel agencies. And it's such a big problem, because then you have, just so you guys have an idea how much of a pain that whole thing is, you literally need to design it in a way where if for some reason a hacker steals my key right now, they are not going to be able to read future messages. So you just change keys, there's a whole thing. But Signal does it, like the double ratchet. And now they have the triple, like post-quantum ratchet, which is...
Yeah, but they tell you you're changing the key if you're verified with...
They do when you change, yeah, so they tell you, first you get to, when you check like the fingerprint, that's exactly what you're doing, is you're just seeing that you are both, you both reach the same encryption key.
Right.
And that's literally what you're doing. You're basically, if you go on, WhatsApp has it too, where you go check fingerprint, is you scan the person's QR code, and it's different per chat, right? And you just go scan it, and what you're just doing is, okay, we have reached exactly the same key, so there's no one in the middle that has that exactly same key, due to the way the math works. Kind of like, we did this properly, so you and I have the exact same key. If that check fails here, that's very scary.
But if somebody tries to inject themselves in the middle, Signal allows you to reject that request to change the key, whereas WhatsApp doesn't. They just change the key.
Yeah, because WhatsApp, when you change phone, you rekey automatically, and you do a couple of things. And it even says like, they have a new key. Yeah, because they use something language.
That's because they have.
And usually, they use like this weird language, very cryptographically. Yeah, I think they rekeyed or something, and people go like, "What? What did you do?" But it just means that they bought a new phone, and they had to like do the whole like key material.
Right.
Hopefully, a short answer to the daft question, but earlier you talked about how what a quantum machine would do would essentially halve the number of bits to the parity.
Yeah.
Would a solution? Is there a reason why a solution isn't just to keep growing the number of bits in the security. So move to 512 to 1024.
So
to give us some space, or is it
so not with elliptic curves, due to the way the attack works. So the way to break elliptic curves, there's actually a crazy paper about exactly this by one of the most skeptical like cryptographers in the world, where he literally goes, what if we were to do this? And some of the keys were like 3 gigs. And it's like, are you actually going to send a key that is like 3 gigs, right? But he just did it to show exactly, oh, what if we were to take like the naive approach of just growing what we already do today, right? So like if you have a cipher that just multiplies both primes, why don't we just put the primes on steroids? And it gets out of control. So it's just easier to use like other types of math.
Okay.
So for hashing, that works exceptionally well. It's the primitive where it works best, because as you saw, you just divide by 2 hashing. So the moment you have a hash that is 256 bits, you're already good. There's also another caveat there, but that doesn't really make sense to cover it, because it's literally very peculiar. But that is true. For hashing is whatever number you see in like the bits of security, you just divide by 2, which is not the same as it being 2 times as easy. Remember, because it's a square root. But just divide by 2. If it's 128, massive. If it's 256, even better.
Awesome. So we'll wrap it up then. Thank you very much.